Relates now to the matter of opening Barbados to regular commercial air traffic. Effective July 12th, scheduled commercial air traffic will resume at the Grantley Adams International Airport. And we will start with it coming from Canada, with the arrival of Air Canada, which will be coming initially twice per week on Thursdays and Sundays. On the 18th of July, British Airways will resume flights into Barbados from Gatwick, London, and these flights will initially come at least once per week, but will also respond to demand. Discussions, therefore, will continue with them. On the 25th of July, we hope that JetBlue will come from JFK, and that is intended to be 4 times per week. I want to be frank with you and tell you that we had originally expected to start on July 2nd with American Airlines out of Miami, but I don't think I need to explain to you why that will now be August 5th, 2020. We will continue to take a risk-based approach to the protection of our country, our people, and our visitors. Similarly, Virgin will resume flights on August 1st, and those are scheduled to come once per week initially until they ramp back up their full schedule for the winter in October. I now want to ask Minister Kerry Simmons to build on that, and as I do so, with respect to Caribbean flights, let me say that it is anticipated that CAL will resume in mid-July. The shareholders of LIAT are having an informal caucus tomorrow in order to be able to determine the future of LIAT, and we will be in a better position to speak to that over the course of the next few weeks as to how we will proceed. Suffice it to say, though, that we are committed to ensuring that there will be effective, affordable, reliable and safe interregional travel as part of the product mix starting from July. Minister?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Prime Minister indicated as part of her core theme today, the refueling of business cannot be done without also having a clear mind and understanding towards the health of workers and the health of Barbadian citizens. And so therefore this process of reopening, and I use that word advisedly, but this process has to be done hand in hand between the interests of business and the interests of people. Now I don't want to belabor the point, but we never closed the airport. The airport has always been open for the purposes of repatriation flights. It has always been open for the purposes of cargo being flown into the island. And so therefore, what we are doing is recommencing scheduled commercial traffic. And as you will recall, when last I spoke to you from this place, scheduled commercial traffic came to be suspended after we had to take certain steps with regard to the first case of COVID on the island and implementing a 14-day quarantine. Now, the question as we go forward is one of the protocols which ensure the safety of the workers at the airport and obviously the safety of the Barbadian citizens. That has been the first priority of the ministry, working in collaboration with the Ministry of Health officials. And I'm happy to say that we've been able to work through a number of protocols. The first of them would have been the protocols for the accommodation sector, and they have been settled with the Barbados Workers Union and the National Union of Public Workers. We've done protocols for the attractions, and we've done protocols, we are working on, protocols for the villa accommodation as well. And we are now at a stage where we have settled the protocols for people arriving into the country. And that is perhaps the most important of the processes. Before you embark on your journey to Barbados, you must, within 72 hours of the commencement of travel, do a COVID-19 PCR antigen test. And that test must be then accredited by a laboratory which would be, or the accreditation of the laboratory will be by the Ministry of Health and Wellness here. The standard of that test must be ISO or CAP, or in the case of the United Kingdom, UKAS compliant, or the equivalent thereof. And the specifics of that will obviously be made available as we do the public education and awareness program. After passing that test, you will obviously get a certificate that indicates that you're COVID negative, and you're expected to fill out online your ED card, which will also carry within it, the ED card now will have a new look, and it will carry within it a number of questions which relate specifically to issues relating to personal health and symptoms. And once you have filled that out online and submitted it, you get an exchange sent back to your email address. Most people will walk with it on their telephone, a barcode, which once you arrive into the island and you have your certificate indicating that you've passed the COVID-19 test, you just clear immigration and you are allowed into Barbados. Now, I want to emphasize one thing in particular, and that is that we are managing risk. And there is no perfect system. We accept that there has to be a management of the risk, and to make sure that we minimize the risk of exposure to people in Barbados with COVID as best as and as practically as is humanly possible. There will obviously be instances where people may not have been able to get the COVID-19 test within 72 hours prior to departure from wherever they're coming from to Barbados. And one very simple example of that was made manifest on CNN this morning, simply because of the fact that testing facilities are so far apart in the United States and so difficult to access. In circumstances where people arrive here without having the COVID-19 test, they must do one at the airport. There will be a facility made available in the Concord experience. During the course of this week, the head of the COVID-19 unit and myself would have paid some visits there, and we are working through the logistics for the reactivation of the Concord Center and setting it up as a location from which we can do tests. In addition to that, however, we are mindful of the fact that, say, for example, once we come to a Saturday during the month of August, we will have flights coming in from the United Kingdom, British Airways, and Virgin Atlantic, which together may amount to over 500 people, assuming that they're full. And there, therefore, will be a backup. And one of the things that we have explored has been identifying a number of hotels, probably not more than 4 at the maximum, which will be satellite testing facilities. I do not wish to name those properties now, but the reality is that discussion has taken place with some owners, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness must also finally satisfy themselves before we recommence scheduled commercial travel that those testing facilities that we are proposing are in fact adequate. And from those places, people will be able at their own expense to get a test done and spend some time on property while they await the test results. Obviously, if you fail a COVID-19 test, then that which has always happened before will continue to happen. You will be taken into isolation for the care to be given to you there. Beyond that, the protocols will require that all persons entering Barbados travel to Barbados wearing face masks, that you be tested for temperature checks on arrival. There is a facility that has now been installed at Grantley Adams Airport, which makes that considerably more easy because you just walk through and your temperature will be taken automatically. So we will no longer have to have the handheld guns and so on in order to make that happen. And thereafter, once you are able to satisfy immigration, port health, and customs, you're free to go on your way. For those people, as I said before, who present with a problem or who are recognized to have a problem, then they will obviously be taken aside and subjected to the necessary questions and subsequent testing just to make sure that all those situations are properly taken care of. I think it is important also to make the point that there is a standard of 72 hours in advance of travel that we are applying. But we are facing a gradual reopening of the travel to Barbados. We are doing this in a set of circumstances where we are coming from zero against a backdrop where at this time of the year last year, for example, using the UK market again, we would have had 5 flights weekly, or in some cases 7 flights weekly, depending on the airline, from the United Kingdom. So as we begin, we're beginning with a 1 flight weekly. There's a substantial diminution of business. And we have, therefore, to go slowly and to make sure that we dot I's and cross T's along the way, and also to make sure that we take every possible precaution as we go forward in order to protect people's personal health and safety. The passage through the airport having been granted, there's obviously the question of those people who may still need to be quarantined. Now, there are different categories of countries. Some countries are treated by the Ministry of Health and Wellness as being more high risk. Others are treated as being medium risk. Others are very low risk. The more high-risk ones, I think you will know and recognize from international news, and that is basically decided against the criteria of the amount of new cases you're getting, the amount of deaths you're getting, and the rate of those deaths. And obviously, the low risk is the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, CARICOM generally, is treated as a set of low-risk countries. The exception that I want to make clear to the public is that with regard to the low-risk countries, in particular CARICOM, the requirement for travel, before travel having to have a test within 72 hours will not be in place. That will be 1 week before travel. And that is simply because of the fact that there is a capacity issue in the Eastern Caribbean that we have to be candid about as well. Every country in the Eastern Caribbean does not have the ability to access a testing facility within its borders. So a test in laboratory within its borders. The test is done, and then it has to be sent to the CARFA lab and then sent back, and that obviously is a time-consuming exercise. So we give, for those low-risk countries, a special dispensation. If, however, there's a secondary reason which causes poor health to express some concern, then there will be the requirement for there to be testing either here in Barbados on arrival or subjected to a period of quarantine until such time as any of the health issues that might have arisen or about which you may have some concern have been clarified. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go forward, as I said to you, the reality is that we are trying to reopen the country's tourism business in a sensitive manner and in a manner which allows for there to be business activity on one hand and the protection of people's personal health and safety on the other. The Prime Minister mentioned the tourism reboot plans and operations which are still being formulated, but I can say to you candidly that what we're trying to do is to make sure that there is a feel once again of the activities that this country has become accustomed to, especially during this time of the year, across the island. Obviously, we cannot now have Kadooment, we cannot have crop over as we would traditionally know it. But we can have parties, and we can enjoy music, and we can enjoy entertainment. But we must do so, as the Attorney General just indicated, in a sensible and health safety way. And so therefore, we've identified some areas which will be immediately targeted for refreshing of the tourism product, first of all, uplifting of the image of the area for the purposes of tourism and entertainment, secondly, and also to recognize that as we re-enter the global business of tourism, we have to do so in a way in which we are now selling Barbados to not only to Barbadians, but to the rest of the world as being an area which is considerably more upbeat and lively. St. Lawrence Gap is one such example. And so as recently as yesterday, Cabinet would have passed or approved a paper which allows us now to focus on the refurbishment in many ways of St. Lawrence Gap, the improvement of the product in the Gap, and dealing with some of the issues relating to cleanliness and relating to safety, relating to sanitation, et cetera, that we have kicked down the road for a long time and never properly confronted. Similar types of exercises will have to be dealt with in Whole Town and also in Oistins and also in the city of Bridgetown at one or two other locations, Baxter's Road being one of them. But I also want to say that we feel very strongly that the question of fetes and so on can be done, and we set up a fete at one location, or party, entertainment, performers, etc. at one location, and then we use Zoom in as a means of allowing people to focus on that exercise, participate on a big screen, but at a different location across the island. And in that way, we'll be able to transplant the activity of the party and the entertainment across Barbados to several districts and in several villages, on several playing fields, etc. at one time. So we plan to have a crop over without it being a traditional crop over, and I would want to thank you all very much.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister tried to tell you just now about fetting, but he don't know nothing about fetting. So let me repeat it properly for you. Look, after the 15th of July, there will be some opportunities for people to come and to be able to have some satellite zoom-in fetes. So 500 per pasture, 10 pastures, 12 pastures. How much, Mr. Chapman? 20 pastures. Why? Because they're separate. And therefore, they will allow for people to be able to rejoice and to be able to have a little rest. When we started this journey in June 2018, I told you, and I told the IMF and the international community, that before a long journey, people need a little breakfast. But on a long journey, people need a little rest too. And because people overwhelmingly adhered to these protocols, we are here. I thank you for truly that. And that this little rest is to give us the energy and the commitment to face whatever we have to face, because we have not effectively passed the moment where COVID is out of the world. And therefore, we have to learn to live with it. We don't even know ultimately if there will be a vaccine. We expect the therapeutic. Next week, I hope to have some other good news at a regional level to announce, and I look forward to that, which will help the region continue to be able to manage its capacity as we go ahead protecting lives and livelihoods. But we have, as Bajans, to work together to adhere to the remaining protocols, which Minister Simmons and the Attorney General have announced today, and as Minister has said, to be our brothers and sisters' keeper. I've said, remember the brake and the accelerator. We will not be afraid to use it. And you know me, I will tell you straight, I will tell you as it is, but I will also do what is necessary to protect the people of this nation. We have to learn to live with it, and we have seen that the measures to lock it out completely have contraindications that are beyond what most of our countries can bear and what our families and our people can bear. The loss of jobs and the closure of businesses will be far more devastating in the long run than what we can do. We want to create, my friends, an environment that people want to visit, or indeed, and I know the Minister will be working on this with the Minister of Immigration, to announce arrangements shortly that will allow people to come to Barbados to work, to rest, and to play from here, sending their work back to the countries wherever they are for an extended period of time during COVID-19. Why? Because we know that this is one of the best places on earth to be and to remain, because of the care with which we will take to protect the people of this nation and those who are here on island with us. And we want also to be able to give them an opportunity to provide them, therefore, with that longer period of time, because if you're working from home in the States, or you're working from home in England, or you're working from home in Canada, you could work from home here if your employer allows it, or if you're in a position so to do. And given that tourism is not only about hotels, I've also asked last week for the Ministry of Tourism to work with the Ministry of Youth and the Ministry of Culture to be able to give us a program that will allow us to pay for many of our children through the summer camps or the clubs to which they belong to visit some of our premier tourism attractions over the course of the next few months, particularly over the summer, so that we may assist, one, in teaching our children about what we have on island, but two, helping those facilities to remain open. In addition to those who belong to summer camps or those who belong to clubs, I'm also saying for the rest of those families who can do it on their own, I invite you to take and to visit as many of our sites. How many people have been to Harrison's Cave? How many people have been to to the museum and to the different sites that people go to on island? We need to show that we can protect our assets, our attractions, and do it by first and foremost allowing our young people and our children to learn about them so that they can nurture them and promote them and appreciate their importance to their heritage here in Barbados. And we must always, as I say, remember that the Forest Tourist is a Bajan. And to that extent, we can keep open many of these enterprises. So, this is the journey. It's just a different leg. As I said, that we need to give people some rest on this long journey. I know that we can do it. And while there may be no formal crop over, as Kerry said, there will be an opportunity for people to be able to pull down and rest themselves and to be able to get through. I ask people to continue to remain calm, to remain focused, to recognize that mentally, this is little respite is what we need. Similarly, do not drop your guard. The mask, most of the time, please wear it. And certainly where there is no opportunity for physical distancing, wear it. The washing of your hands, the use of hand sanitizer, the physical distancing of 1 meter now, all of these are things that will every day, each hour, each minute, protect you and protect those around you. For those who are going to be coming home to their families, if you know that you're going into an environment with a lot of people, we ask you to consider staying somewhere else. We ask you even, and I've asked the Minister of Tourism to also make sure that there are some affordable deals for Bajans who may not be in a position to stay at home, but who may want other opportunities to be able to stay while at the same time recognizing, because for the first few days after, we still need you to be exceedingly careful and to monitor. Will we be able to stop another COVID case in Barbados? No. Will we be able to manage them? Yes. Do we have the confidence, as Jeffrey said, that a journey 3 months ago that was unwalked is now a journey which we understand the bends in the road, we understand the ascent of the hill, we understand the steep descent coming down. And I believe that if we can remember, as I've said always from this platform, with God on our side, we have no doubts nor fears. To the task, Barbadians, of rebuilding our country and ensuring that we move to the next stage of this journey. And I ask you, please, please, if there are concerns, share them with us. Mr. Chapman, I hope that the camera shows Mr. Chapman's face, because people must know that just like Mr. Carter is the COVID czar, this is the gentleman in charge of the COVID monitoring unit, and he, with the other environmental health officers and the Ministry of Labour officials, will be our first eyes, along with Mr. Carter and others. Those managing the quarantine facility for now will get their respite, Minister. And I trust and pray that those of you on the EOC, I'm asking you, please, take 3-4 days off. No meetings for the next 3-4 days. I'm saying it in front of everybody. They have been meeting every day since January. And I think the rest of Barbados would want me to say, job well done. Any questions?
Good afternoon,
State your name, Barry.
Good afternoon, Minister Barry Allen from the Nation. Can you give us an indication in terms of our testing capacity and capability of the PRC tests? In the next few months, we're going to be probably having to test more people. What is our capacity now? Do we have to reorder?
We have over 30,000 kits and the supporting mechanisms necessary. We have orders for increased machinery. I'm also investigating some other options, and as I said, I have a major announcement to make next week, so leave me the opportunity and space so to do. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Prime Minister. Michael Phillips from the Barbados Advocate. You mentioned, I think it was Minister Simmons that had mentioned that on coming in, if you do test positive for COVID-19, you will go into one of our facilities. I understand that that would be the case for a local coming home, but at whose expense if the person is not a resident or citizen of Barbados?
The Barbados government has always treated emergency cases as emergency cases. We don't stop and ask where the money is before you give somebody the opportunity to be able to live, and we will continue to do that. With respect to the cases, we are also looking at something, and it's probably too early to speak, but for those who are asymptomatic, we're also looking at another type of isolation facility that may more suit some of them. But once you get a certain past a certain level of sickness with symptoms, one place and one place alone, Harrison's Point. Okay?
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Randy Bennett from Barbados today. You mentioned that...
Sorry, and just let me say that if you stay asymptomatic in that other facility that we want to have, you'll pay. But if you are acute, then the government of Barbados takes care of you to save your life.
You mentioned that beginning next month, there will be some flights from the U.S. Was there any consideration given to barring U.S. travelers from visiting Barbados concerning the COVID situation there?
No, I think I said earlier that the first flight was to have been American Airlines on the 2nd of July, and that we have deliberately postponed that to the 5th of August because we recognize that after you have a situation and a flare-up, based on the advice of the Ministry of Health, you actually need at least a month to begin to see if they take the right measures to be able to minimize the risk. So we will not, and you will notice that it is primarily other states. New York's trajectory is where is it? Right down to the bottom. So that we will continue to watch, but we will have no interaction for another, today is what date? The 26th of June? What did I announce for the first flight from the US? 26th of July. And from Miami, the 5th of August. So I hope that answers your question, my brother. Any more questions before we go?
One question, Prime Minister. Minister Simmons would have mentioned the probability of some visitors without health certification having to do tests here. Mm-hmm. Will that require them to pay for that test, or that will be provided by the government?
Any tests that we give at the Concord Experience will be free. Any tests that are done at a tourism satellite testing center for tourists or Bajans, you have to pay for. So pick your choice. If you want to stay at the Concord Experience and wait for the results and everything, that's free.
Has the unit price been determined for that test?
Yes, the unit price is $150 US.
Yes.
$150 US. Okay? But once you are on the precincts of Grantley Adams Airport, Bajan or tourists, you come in there, free. If you want to go to the hotel so that you can sit back and do whatever you want to do, you got to pay there. Okay? Any other questions? May I use this opportunity, please, to you from the Advocate. You've lost your owner, Sir Anthony Bryan, and I'd like to extend my sympathy to the staff and people of the Barbados Advocate, and to you at the Nation, Barry, and to the Nation family. The loss of Christophe is one of the things that has hurt me more than most things recently. I knew him as a young boy. His father has been my resident beat officer for most of my career in the community which I represent. And as I said in Parliament the other night, we have to come to grips, and I know the Attorney General and the Minister of Health are firmly of the same opinion as me, that we have to come to grips with mental health in this country. We cannot continue to push it under a carpet. We need to discuss it in our families. We need to discuss it in our workplace. We need to discuss it publicly in our country, because any life loss as a result is tragic. And then, of course, there is the life of the person who is enduring the mental health problems themselves. That is equally tragic. So please extend to your colleagues within the profession and generally to all of the media here our great loss, because most of us know that Christophe would have been here this morning with us if he could have been. So God bless him. Okay?
Just one question.
You're now batting outside the crease, Barry.
Don't let it go fast.
It depends.
There has been some push. This is a question for your chairman of the CARICOM. There has been some pushback from some corners in Guyana in response to your comments about the disappointment with some things that would have occurred within the last week or so. Would you like to respond to the persons who have been a little critical of your comments?
Now, the truth hurts. I have nothing more to say. The truth hurts. But what we must never do in CARICOM is avoid the truth and avoid our principles. Thank you very much and have a pleasant day.